Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the United Front Football Podcast. It is a football podcast with me and Mr. Breezy. We've got plenty of fantastically exciting and definitely not depressing football stuff to talk about this week from both sides of us, really. Obviously, the United news of a new manager coming in. It was rumoured to be Amarim last week. We discussed it a little bit, but that's now been confirmed. He's coming in pretty soon. A pretty dire game from ourselves at home against Chelsea, but came out with a point. But you're not getting away with that getting away with it that easy. Sorry, if I can actually speak. We're going to start with what you witnessed against Nottingham Forest, West Ham. Obviously, Forest have been very good this season, and I'll come on to like what I saw from the game, really from like obviously like a bit of an outsider's perspective of it. Eventually, but I'll hand the floor over to you. Obviously, resident West Ham fan, Amma up the irons and all that.
Yeah.
So just take it away. Yeah. What do you take from the weekend, and has your opinion on the direction that the club's going, or the direction that the players and the tactics are going in, and how the manager is handling things? Has it changed from last week at all? Because obviously last week we discussed it a bit, and it was like, he needs more time. Things aren't going to change overnight. Are you starting to kind of get a little bit more? Yeah, I see where all the angry people are coming from now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely starting to sway. I mean, like 10 games is usually the barometer that you judge any manager in, especially when they're new and they come in sort of pre-season. I think usually it's like, oh, we'll give it 10 games, see how we're getting on. And I think I'm sure I said it on the podcast like in pre-season that after the transfer window we had, I was pretty adamant that it was going to be a difficult start to the season, like in terms of fixtures and just so much new like personnel were through the door. Obviously, like new manager, new staff, new players. Like it was always going to take time. And I think I definitely could have become more on board with losing games, as long as there was something to sort of like hang on to, in the sense of like, okay, we've lost this one, but like you can see which direction we're going in. And we're 10 games in now, and I really don't know where this team's going under Lopetegui, unfortunately. Like tactically and in terms of what the game plan is week to week or half to half, even like it feels very disjointed, feels very muddled, feels very confused. Like there's no consistency. Like I said last week, we're not a team that takes it game by game. We're half by half at the moment. Like it's just like trying to get a consistent level of performance across 90 minutes it's been a real struggle for us this year. And ultimately, can't really get away from it. The performances are getting worse since the opening day of the season. Like someone asked me earlier, it's like we look at the teams we've lost to, they teams you would expect to beat. It's like no, like obviously Villa at home first game quite difficult in a game I thought we battled and contested fairly well. City at home played really well. We're unlucky to lose, I thought, in the manner that we did anyway, like we were in 3-1. But then you look at like Chelsea at home, Spurs away, first half against Man United, and now obviously the latest thumping at the hands of Nottingham Forest too. Like you say, having a really, really strong start to the season. They remind me a little bit actually of West Ham when Moyes came back in that first full season. Moyes was back in the COVID year, like very similar type of side. But yeah, it feels like we're on. It just feels like it feels like the performances are getting worse, and it feels like the players are getting worse, and it's just. I think opinion across the board now is starting to sway, and I still don't really know whether sacking him sacking him now anyway, like whether it be 10 games in, 11 or 12 games in, is necessarily the right thing to do. But it's stuck with me actually since you said it last week of, you want to give managers time, but you don't want to give too much time to the wrong guy. And at the moment, if you're going to be blunt about it and you're going to be brutally honest about it, I think there's way more evidence to suggest that he's probably not the right guy than there is that he is, because bar like the Villa defeat and the City defeat, every other defeat we've had this year, and even some of the draws, like like Fulham, for example, like you look at it and there's not really much, that you come away with more questions and more negatives than you do positives, really. And it's it's pretty tough. It's like I say, it's tough to watch because it just feels like the same issues have been there now for what he came in start of July, so he's been there now for about 4 months. like to work with the players, and it just feels like the majority of the squad still doesn't really have a great understanding of what he wants from them, or they do, and what he wants from them just isn't working and it isn't getting the best out of them, and that ultimately that's his job, right? We've got a talented squad of talented players. Like even with Kudus missing, even with like Fulkrug unavailable and stuff, you still look at that squad and think that's more than good enough to be. No disrespect to Forest, like again having a really good year, but the squad we've got should be going to Forest and at least competing. Which I think that's the biggest disappointment from the weekend. We weren't ever really in the game, especially from for the first goal. I thought we looks a little bit more solid at the back, but the first goal goes in and it's an awful goal to concede from the perspective of like Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Guido Rodriguez, who just completely switch off like inexplicably, and it allows the first goal to happen. And then, as we have done many times this year, we just completely crumble, which obviously starts with the second moronic red card of from Edson Alvarez this season. So yeah,
worrying trend that from him, isn't it? Like,
which it's weird though because he's always been a bit of a liability in terms of getting cards, but last season anyway, he was always good for a yellow card. I think he ended up missing. I think he picked up like 12 yellow cards. I think it was last season. But you never really felt like he was gonna. You always felt that once he was on the booking, he was a lot more controlled and he was able to sort of restrain himself a little bit more and not sort of dive in. Like a lot of the yellow cards he would take would be either for a clumsy challenge like you saw with the second one, or it would be for the first one where he just sort of stops a counter attack and just pulls someone to the sort of ground. But yeah, it's the second time this year where like he's been on a yellow card and just got him for a slide tackle in an area of the pitch where he doesn't really need to, and just completely mistimes it. Yeah, and I really like Alvarez, but it's just you can't keep doing that because you just become a liability to the team, eventually. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's not been a great start to the season, and like I said, I'm trying very very hard to get behind the manager and give him, that patience. But there's only so much you can do, so much of it you can watch and take, right?
From like an outside perspective, like I said, like from what I saw of the game, and granted, I didn't watch minute 1 to minute 90, but like I was dipping in and out, and I've watched quite a lot of extended highlights and things.
Yeah, and you saw him play last week as well, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
The United game, so
exactly, yeah. The first half I thought was pretty balanced. Like obviously, like it's not necessarily recency bias, but like remembering what went wrong in the second half, and the fact that Forest did actually like took control of the game, scored another couple of goals, and it looked like a comprehensive victory. I thought the first half was actually pretty even, all things considered. Obviously, they get the goal from a mistake, but it never felt like. It felt like you were going to get back into the game. Like the felt like it was chances, and you were getting in their half, and like it could have gone either way. And I think a well fought away 1-1 draw, against the team that, like, as we say, is flying. They got their defense is playing really well. They got a really good keeper. The Chris Wood's on fire somehow, and they've got a really talented and exciting kind of attacking three behind him, like young exciting players. I think going away to Forest right now, and especially in the position that you've been in the results you've been getting, and getting a creditable draw, would have been fine. I think just that red card in the second half, it sours the rest of the performance. I think, like from the outside looking in, and it's interesting you say like a lot of the things you were saying there, and a lot of the phraseology is very much things that I've said and have heard said about Erik ten Hag over the past, like the start of the season. It's like we keep seeing the same thing, the same mistakes happening. Like our players buying in. It's either players aren't doing what they're being asked, or they are doing what they're being asked, and what they're being asked is bad. The one thing I'd say that Lopetegui has shown, and it's something that you could see it as a criticism or as a praise of him, is the amount of times that you'll come out and not have a good first half, and he'll make early substitutions, half-time changes, change of shape, perfectly. Shown at the United game, right?
Yeah.
Change the game up, affect it, take the players off that aren't playing well, and change the game for the good, and come away with a result from a game that looks like it might be getting away from you. I think that the difference is because he's so new, pulling the trigger and getting rid. I don't know whether you'd necessarily regret it, because I don't think it's not like you brought him in and brought players for him from his,
no,
like. He'll have a saying like, "Oh yeah, these are the kind of players that I want." But at the end of the day, you've got this. Yeah, is it Tim Stighton and like your director of football and like your recruitment team and all that kind of stuff, bringing the kind of players in that they want to see at the club and what they want to build the future around. So, if it were a case of They go, look, we've obviously just like made a wrong choice here. Oopsie. As I said last week, everyone wants to give managers time, but there's nothing wrong with admitting when you've made a mistake, or like the right guy isn't there right now.
Yeah.
That might be the case, but also it might just be a case of, like you say, a lot of new players. You've had a couple of injuries in key areas. You've had suspensions and players just not playing well. It might just be a case of it's taking time, but I agree that it's getting to the point or getting towards Judgment Day almost of like, okay, once you hit December, it's like, okay, you're halfway through a season now. You've had a lot of time with these players. Like, these players have bedded in. Like, you should be able to get, not necessarily like, you shouldn't be top 8 or top 6 and doing this, but like getting a more consistent performance and more reliable performance out of the team than you are. Should it continue being kind of a bit erratic and a bit transitional and the same mistakes being made? Because at the end of the day, like, that's what did for Ten Hag. Is like, okay, well, yeah, we'll chalk last season down to experience because of all the injuries and all that kind of stuff. Still massively underperformed. You've got a few more months now, and the same issues are showing and the same problems and like not creating enough chances and giving up stupid goals and stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, now we're more kind of assured in the decision that we're going to make. And maybe that'll be the case, or it might buy him an extra 2 or 3 months because he's new. But yeah, I agree in that like the performances are concerning. The only thing I would say is like he has shown ability to change things. Like, and I guess it is just the case of him being confident in the players that he's putting out there. It does feel like a little bit of rotation here and there, and like I've heard both sides of he's too inconsistent with his player selection. It's like, well, maybe he's just figuring out who he can actually trust. Like, if these aren't his players who he's signing and he's been given a squad of players to work with, maybe it is a case of like, okay, well, I need to give everyone at least 3 or 4 games to see who can do what and where they fit in my plans.
It's difficult because it's been so up and down. It's like the sort of inconsistent team selections is sort of, again, you can look at it as like you can look at it, it's like you said, you can look at it as positive or negative, right? Under Moyes, you could predict the starting 11 every single week, whereas at least with Lopetegui, he's trying new things. But I guess the flip side of that would be being at this point in the season, so we're like coming up to sort of being a third of the way through soon, and it feels like he still doesn't really know his best 11, which again, he has to, again, with the context of he's not been here that long. But even so, you feel like by this point you should be pretty close to having that. It feels like the defense is pretty much settled, but he's just changed the goalkeeper. The midfield changes every single week. Like, sometimes going with Antonio, sometimes going with Bowen up front. Like, it doesn't really seem to know what to do with Somerville. It was, I thought, really unlucky to get hooked at halftime. I know the game's because the red card happened just before halftime and it changes the plans. But I thought, again, out of all the people to be subbed off, I don't think he was one of them. I think it's another game where Lucas Paqueta is really lucky to be on the pitch. But yeah, like it's difficult because again, you look at the fixtures we've got coming up. Like, I think it's been sort of reported in the Athletic and the usual sources where David Sullivan is known to leak info to that the Everton game is basically down as a must win. Now, what that means, fuck knows really, because it's not. It would be. It's very David Sullivan to sack a manager this early into his tenure and then go and get someone else. But even then, even if he beats Everton, we've got Newcastle away after that, who seems to be turning a bit of a corner. Then Arsenal at home, who, they're not very good at the moment. They're still on current form batter us. Like, and it's like, it's this December for me feels like more of a crucial month. I think, like, Leicester away, Wolves at home, Bournemouth away, Brighton at home, Southampton away, then Liverpool at home. Like, I think if you got to be looking at wins against like Leicester away, Wolves, and Southampton there, I think you've got to be looking at about 9 points from 18 as a minimum.
Yeah, I'd say like 11 or 12 points out of those games are what you need. Whether that be through a couple of draws and a few wins and whatever. Like, but yeah, I agree with December's got to be the litmus test. But maybe it is a case of with the new structure that you got there, then they've at least. You can at least go, okay, well, who if we need to pull the plug, like, who is the guy coming in? And then that's another discussion altogether, right? Like, there's tons of. To be fair, I think there's I think there's a lot of managers who would be really interested in that job, and a lot of managers who I think could be really suited to that job. So I don't think it's not. I mean, not to kind of. I'm not putting West Ham down. But it's not like Liverpool or United are looking for we need someone to come in and fix this dumpster fire, right? Okay, you've got a really good team of players here. The last guy didn't work out, but I'm sure you're a good manager. You'll get it to work. It could be a manager who's in the Premier League or ex-Premier League or kind of just doing well in another league somewhere else who's looking for that next step up. I thought Lopetegui would have been a really good shout for you guys. But like you say, it's looking like it's not worked, but it's looking like it's definitely not been as good as anyone would hope, right?
Yeah, there's like I say, there's more evidence to suggest that it's not going to work in the long term than there is. There's going off the games we've played already. You'd be a brave man to bet on him turning it around just on what we've seen so far, because there's not really been much. There's been like a handful of moments in a handful of games where it's like you can go, okay, if we can do more of that, we'll be fine. But yeah, it's the difficult thing for me is I think the club kind of need to sit down and figure out what it is they want, because if you want. And this is the problem again with Sullivan ultimately seemingly being the guy who's going to pick him, because the big and this is why I feel kind of bad for Lopetegui in a way, because I don't really felt like he ever had a fighting chance from the start, because he wasn't a popular appointment amongst the fan base. Like, I think it's been heavily reported that Stighton and Noble and other people wanted to go in a different direction, and Sullivan was the one who pushed for Lopetegui. So that's his guy. So it's kind of like, now if you're going to sack him, and are you going to be the guy picking the next manager? If not, then is it down to Stighton and Noble now to identify the next guy? And if that is the case, what is it we're going for here? Are you going long term and you're looking for I'm going to make comparisons just because it's easier, but are you going for like a Iriola type manager where it's like, we're going to give this guy time and it's going to, and we back him for it to pay off? Or do you go and get like an Emery type manager who we want someone to come in right away and have an immediate impact and get this team up the table? And I don't really know where the club stand on that and what they want from that. So yeah, that's the difficult part. And also, just again, I do think West Ham are a tempting job for managers out there. It's just one: is Sullivan going to bite the bullet and actually pay money to get a manager out of his contract? He's never done it before, and if he isn't, then that massively limits us in terms of the names that are available. Because if you're just looking on the free market. So yeah, like I say, I feel for Lopetegui in a way, because like I say, I don't think he was ever really anyone's first choice, and when that's the case, I think from a fan base perspective, you're always sort of fighting against the tide in that way. That you've kind of got to come in and have an immediate impact, because people have got their preconceived ideas of what you're going to be like as a manager, and if you get off to a bad start, it just confirms you get a lot of the "I told you so's" and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Seems a bit harsh. Like I don't want to go too, hyperbolic with it, like some will. Ultimately, I don't think we're in any danger of getting relegated. Because we've got a decent squad of players, and I know there's examples in the past where teams with good squads have gone down before. But one, we've got a decent squad of players, and two, we have shown when we need to, we can beat teams that are on paper a lot worse than we are.
And
like you've seen, I
think generally there's definitely going to be 3 or 4 teams worse than you.
And
I guess that might even be the thing that plays into it. Is like, realistically, what was the goal at the start of the season? Like the top 10, maybe. If that's, if it's looking like that's not the case, it's like, okay, well, get a solid mid-table finish, and dependent on how your second half of your season goes, you might be here for another year. If not, then we'll push the boat out. And it might be a case of, you're looking at maybe a manager whose contract's up at the end of the year, or someone who's free. Like, I mean, there's a Dutch guy who had a really good win percentage at Man United available. But there are managers around as well. Though, Graham Potter's still out of work, and he was being lauded for the work that he did at Brighton. Yeah, it didn't work at Chelsea, but he was he was like the canary first down the mine, at that bonkers Chelsea setup before they've actually kind of got things a little bit settled. It's still mental there, right? But it's not as kind of up in flames as it was. And you got there's managers around like Niko Kovac, there's Conte Sao, and who've done really good jobs at other places. I know Roger Smith was being linked with United, who went into Benfica and did an amazing job, and then just got shit canned because because
players got told.
well, yeah. Well, a bit of all of it really. Like it just felt like
Yeah.
everything was just on fire from the top down there at the time. So there are good managers around, and it might not be as mad a thing to go, okay, let's just roll the dice on this one after 6 months because it's not worked. Let's see if something else works. But at that point, are you making a rod for your own back? And if you get seen as a club that's going to do that, how many managers are going to go, look, if I can't immediately turn this around, then I'm just going to be out of a job immediately. So
I guess it depends on the way you look at it, right? Because it could be seen as like a brave call to make that decision and then replace him this early on, and it could show, depending on the way you look at it, it could show a level of ambition in a way of like, look, this is not where we want to be, this is not where we expect to be, so we want someone who can deliver on what what the club wants. It's just as long as it doesn't become a habit is the problem. And on the flip side, you don't want to be, and this is something that we saw last season, where you're hanging on to a manager when you know that he's got no long-term future. We had that with Moyes last year, and you saw how the end of our season went as a result of that. So I'd hope the club are keen not to repeat that process, because it is the difference now is it's early enough that we can turn it around. And you've seen managers come in. You said Emery earlier. He came in and Villa was 17th in like November. They finished 7th. So it's like, and like I looked at the table, like as doom and gloom as it may feel at the moment, we are only like, I mean, Brighton are in 8th and we're 5 points behind them. Like, and we're 7th, 14th. So it's like you go on a run and the table looks a lot different. And like I say, you look at I think we're not that far behind. Like we're only like 4 points behind Newcastle, behind Bournemouth, and Fulham and Spurs. So it's like, whilst it doesn't look immediately obvious that we can catch those teams right now, again, you put on a decent run of form and you probably can do. But it's just whether or not. I don't know. I feel like Everton next week I think if we lose that and we lose it badly, I don't know if there's a way back really, because I know Everton are a good side and I know they've been unlucky in games this year, but they are still a club that are regularly battling relegation, and a team that have had some really poor results and some poor performances this year. Like for a club, and with the squad they've got as well, I think you compare the two squads, it shouldn't really be a contest. I know football doesn't work like that, but ultimately at home, that's a game you should, if you've got ambitions to be in the top half of the table, that's a game you should be looking as a guaranteed 3 points. And if we don't win, or if we lose and we lose badly, then like if we get humped again 3-0 or 3-1 or whatever, then I just don't see how he can carry on going into the run of fixtures that we have after that, especially. It's then from a player standpoint, you're looking at it thinking, where the fuck are the next 3 points going to come from? If we can't even beat this lot at home. So
it's a good
next
point.
Week will be interesting.
And it's not even like, I mean, there have been good performances. Obviously, the win against United was a good performance. Like changes were made that needed to be changed, but it's not like you've been consistently playing really well and done by a bad decision, or like there's just a mistake, or like something's gone wrong, or like it has been a case of, like you say, your description of it sounds very Man United, because it is like, oh, we've conceded a goal, everyone just gives up. It's like that's what it's felt like for the last the previous 16 months, 18 months for United as well. It's like have a positive first 10 minutes, concede a goal, and it all just goes to shit after that. Like it's felt very similar for that. And like I say, Ten Hag's head has rolled, but he has had a longer scope of underachieving. Even he's won 2 cups, but like underachieving in terms of week to week performances and actual in match performances and stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with it. But like you say, only just gone over a quarter of the way through the season. There's plenty of time to turn it around, and it's the same thing that I've been saying with United. Like, well, we've made the decision now. Yeah, there's going to be 2 more games that we play, but we've got two-thirds of a season after that to get something out of it and get into that top 6. If we get a run of performance similar to you guys, we've got players that are better than the performances we're putting out and the results that we're getting. Yeah. So it could be a turnaround. It might even be a case of that you guys need to get in a guy who's just going to galvanise and set people up properly. I said it on stream before, and I've said it for quite a while. I think Sean Dyche is a perfect West Ham manager, and I know he wouldn't be a sexy appointment. But I think the thing with him is he's always been fighting from underneath. He's overachieving massively with a championship quality squad, I think you give him good
Yeah.
players, and I think he'll do a really good job. But
Yeah.
again, like,
It's one of them. It's one of them. I could probably sit, if I was about another club, I'd sit there and agree. When it's your club, you're like, I don't want to be the guinea pig. I want us to be the experiment.
Yeah.
I'm proven wrong. That's disastrous on many levels. There's many managers just in the Premier League that I think will come in and do really well. Like I know they've lost tonight and didn't play particularly well. I still really like Thomas Frank as a coach. I really like Marco Silva. I hope Eddie Howe's still having a not getting on with his bosses because that'd be cool. But yeah,
Eddie Howe's the one man. Like I think Eddie Howe,
yeah,
if it was going to be a current Premier League manager that United went for, like he'd have been the one that I wanted to get in. But I don't know whether with what he's done at Newcastle and the fact that they're kind of turning it around a little bit now, whether he'd go, cause it'd feel like a bit of a sideways step, or maybe even a slight backwards step. I think. Like I think if he was moving from that, I think he'd be looking to kind of take the step on to a, like say Emery goes from Villa, like he'd be looking to take that kind of job. I think next.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But no, like you said, there's tons of really good managers in the Prem who have shown that they can, galvanize a squad nice and quickly, get results, get things ticking. Thomas Frank's an interesting one because obviously he was really heavily linked with the United job.
Yeah.
So, and I really rate him. I just wonder whether he'd actually leave Brentford for.
He seems really settled, doesn't he?
Yeah, and the fact that they are just playing well. Like,
yeah,
they had a wobble last year, but
yeah, and they weren't great tonight. But like, I feel like if you're a Brentford fan, you'd be like, you can sign or sell whoever. But and if I kind of feel the same way about Fulham, really. Kind of sign or sell whatever player you want, but as long as that guy is still in the dugout, you feel relatively safe. I think if the day ever comes where Silva or Frank do leave either of those clubs, if I was a fan of either, I'll be like, okay, we're in trouble. Well, we have to get this next appointment right because, like, I rate both of them really, really highly. I think they're both tactically flexible, both play like a decent brand of football, and I think that's the thing, like. Because that's the conversation that's going to come up because that was a big part of the reason why Moyes was not hounded out, but why a lot of people were sick of Moyes is because the style of football wasn't the most pleasing to watch, but also it just stopped working, which for me is the main thing. Like I've said before, I actually really like counter-attacking football, but it has to be done well.
You have to be winning games with it. Like
yeah,
if you're scraping draws, then.
That's the thing. There's counter-attacking football, and there's hanging on for dear life in the hope that you can just sort of ping a ball in off Mick Antonio's arse at the 80th minute. Do you know what I mean? Or like waiting for Jared Bones turning to Arjen Robben. Like it's. So I think we can play a brand of football. And actually, I still think the squad, even though it's not a Moyes squad anymore, quote unquote, but like the group of players we've got is more than good enough to be a team that like can play in a mid block and just hit teams on the break. Like it's something I'd love to see us do more, but. I feel like we're trying to control games through possession, and we just haven't really got the players, or the players haven't got the intelligence, or they're just being poorly coached, which at the moment is a possibility to sort of carry that out. But yeah, I'll be well up for going back to just like, winning the ball back in good areas and just pinging it down the flanks because it's fun to watch. So,
just get Jurgen Klopp in. He's on a burning bridges crusade. Just if you want someone to play percentage attacking football, let's go with that.
Yeah, he works for a soulless organisation. We play in a soulless stadium. It's perfect. It's a perfect match.
Oh god! Right. Well, we've discussed new managers and all that kind of stuff a little bit, and obviously there's a new manager coming in at Manchester United, Ruud van Nistelrooy, who's got a 0%.
The chosen one.
Yeah, the chosen one. The game at the weekend against Chelsea, I thought it was I don't know if you watched any of it, I thought it was a really low quality game of football.
Yeah, I've forgotten it already.
Yeah. There was a couple of like flashes, and obviously like Casado's goal was a really good goal. There was the odd bit of really nice play. Garnacho just felt determined to put in an all-time low performance in terms of just out. Like generally speaking, he's got really poor decision making in the final third, and even for him that was bad. Like everything was a really. Everything he did just felt like it was coming off wrong, and I'm amazed he stayed on the pitch. But I guess he has got that kind of goldfish mentality of like he's going to keep trying stuff. His head never drops, so like you've got to at least give him that, and he'll keep trying stuff. And he's always a danger. But we created a couple of chances. Like I thought Chelsea were better than us in the first half. I thought we were a bit better in the second half. Draw's probably a fair result between two teams that aren't that good, really. But I think like the broader takeaway from it is, are we about where Chelsea are at this time? And it was just the management that wasn't really like working for us, because feels like someone who's just come in and kind of raised the mood a little bit, or like that thing of like, oh, I know like none of the players are ever going to say they didn't like the manager and stuff, but maybe just having a new voice, maybe having like not having that thing of like, oh god, like this guy keeps setting us up this way and we keep conceding the same fucking goal. Like he's gone. Like maybe we can actually be. And the two games, and I know it's for like playing against Leicester's reserves and Chelsea, who didn't play very well, but we did seem a little bit more like midfielders aren't 20 yards away from each other. It's like that's a start. Yeah. Like having the midfielders in midfield in front of the defense, cool, right? And the defenders played really well. I thought Mazraoui was really good. I think he's just game after game he's showing that he's an absolute steal at 12 million quid. Like he is the bargain of the transfer window. Let's see if he ends up with a 4-month injury. We'll see what happens. But
we'll see.
Yeah, he's been great. And like some of the attacking players, I thought Bruno had a decent game. Obviously, like kind of flashed a couple of chances, but I think he was one of the few players who was looking like they were actually making sensible decisions in the final third. The big issue, once again, though, is our number 9, who has shown that he is a good finisher. Like, he's a clinical finisher. Like, I think he finished, like, 50% of the chances he got last year. He came off the pitch again without a shot. Like, we are just not create. And I know some of it is, like, him creating space for himself and maybe creating chances for himself and that kind of stuff, but the amount of times, and this kind of rolls back into the what the hell's Garnacho doing a lot of the time, like the decision making in the final third and trying to create chances for other people just isn't there for any of them. And it's not like Garnacho or Rashford at this point are bagging 20 goals a season. Like Garnacho's never done that, and Rashford had an all-time low season last year. Yeah, on a good season he'll get 15, maybe 20 goals, but he's not looking that way this season. And if they're taking every opportunity to create a shot from themselves when you've got a guy in the middle who's shown he can bag, like what are they doing? Like, and it might need a bit of a firm-handed coach to like clip him outside the air or drop him or whatever, because the fact that Garnacho keeps starting games and you've got Diallo on the bench, who more often than not, I've said it in the past, I don't think he's been putting in 8 out of 10 performances all season, but I think he's been consistently putting in 6s, 7s and looking like a guy who will set someone else up rather than just looking for any reason to have a shot himself. That was the frustration. But similar to what I've just said about West Ham, like, we've only just got over a quarter of the way through the season. We're only 6 points off the top 4. If Amorim can come in and kind of galvanise a little bit, get people playing, get people inspired, get people buying in, set them up properly, we're going to run with the quality of the players that we've got. I would, it's not beyond the realms of imagination that we'll go on a bit of a run and turn things around. And he's already like in the latter stages of a cup competition, and he's got a European tournament that we could do very well in. I think we're one of the favourites, if not the favourite, to win that, based on just like the clubs that are in that competition. I think it's us and Spurs the favourites.
Yeah.
It could be a good kind of bedding in period. My only concern is that like the guy's not even walked through the door, and it's already like is he the right guy? What kind of tactics is he going to play? How is X, Y, and Z going to fit in the way that he plays? It's like the dude's not even walked through the door. Like, I know he's coming in before an international break, but most of the teams in international are international players. He ain't going to be working with them. And then after that, I think there is 1 week between now and the little winter break in February or whatever, whenever it is, that isn't 2 matches a week. So it's literally game, recovery, pre-game, then a game, then so like 2 games a week. You've not got any time to do any work on the training field. And Phil Jones had a really good insight on Match of the Day last night. You're saying, played 3 at the back a little bit under Louis van Gaal, and it took a pre-season of 11 aside, lots of training to kind of get used to the spacing and the distances and where everyone's supposed to be at the same time. I don't know if I'm not convinced he's going to walk through the door and go, right, 3-4-3, let's go, where nobody knows how to play it. I could see him going in and trying to impart kind of the way that he wants to play and the kind of relationships he wants on the pitch from a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. but I don't even think it's going to be until the summer, until if he wants to kind of impart that kind of play on the team, that we'll see it. Just because of the amount of time that players don't have on the training field outside of a preseason.
It's a huge change to move to that if United play. Obviously, if United squad have been used to playing a certain shape, because there obviously is a big difference moving from playing a back three to a back four, or from back four to a back three. It's a huge difference just in terms of how your midfield operates, how your wing backs operate, and when you're meant to fill in spaces and all that sort of stuff. And it's kind of like goes back to what I said last week. I think he'd be not silly, because you want your manager to implement a style of football, obviously, and implement what he wants to do and how he wants to set the team up. But at the same time, obviously it was for some reason like heavily reported that he watched the Chelsea game, and it's like, yeah, of course he did. He's about to take the manager's job. It'd be weird if he didn't.
No shit, dude.
Yeah, but it's like you'd imagine
manager watches his club.
Yeah, weird that. Like you'd imagine if he has an idea of what the squad looks like. He probably does already have an idea of whether he's probably made his mind up, or whether or not he feels comfortable shifting him into that shape. But yeah, the thing I want to pick up on is like what you said there about like the stuff that's already started in the media in terms of like, and on YouTube and everything, where it's like, yeah, how's he going to play, and is he the right guy, and like really like listening to like fucking pundits who've never seen a sporting match try and like give a really detailed answer about how they think he's going to be a good fit for the club and all this sort of stuff, and it's just like, I think that's the biggest test for not even just Amorim, but I think for any incoming Manchester United manager, that's the biggest test is going to be, can you just deal with the noise that exists around that club? Like I said last week, I don't think there's I think I said last week, I don't think there's another job in football like it, unlike maybe other than the England job really, and like Real Madrid, where it's like there's just so much talk, so much outside opinion. And to be fair to him, from what I've seen of press conferences and interviews he gives, he's a bit of a weird bloke, I think, in terms of, I'm not saying weird, I think some of his answers are a bit weird. Like, it's probably harsh to attack his character, but no, I think some of his answers are a bit strange and like don't really make a lot of sense. Like when he's asked about the West Ham job, he's like, no, I didn't go over to negotiate, I just went to meet with the chairman. It's like, well, well, why? No one just goes and meets David Sullivan if they don't have to. Like, he's a knobhead. But like, so yeah, it's just stuff like that. But like seeing him sort of like deal with difficult questions and stuff, he does seem to be pretty well equipped at doing so. It's just there's obviously a difference from like one news story when you're at Sporting, to every single week when you're Man United manager. Yeah, I'm fascinated. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he gets on. I just hope that he's given the time, not just from the fans, but also, and I think like the match going, like the sensible fans and stuff, will give him time. It's just everyone else, and like you watch the sort of the post game coverage on Sky, and it's like all they're talking about is like, I sort of had it half. I was half listening to it because I kind of knew it was going to be, but like whenever I sort of did tune in, but like all they was talking about was, oh, so what can Amorim do to get United back to where they want to be, and like, and oh, how far away are, and it's just the same questions all the time, and it's like, can you just let them build for a bit rather than like this mad rush to get back to the Ferguson era? Like it's probably not going to happen within a year. It's probably going to take about 5 years if if everything works well. So I think, yeah, just sort of dealing with all the outside noise and the outside expectation from everyone else is going to be the big test. Because I don't think Ten Hag dealt with it very well.
No, definitely didn't. And you're right. I think like the vast majority, I don't even think match-going fans, just like general Man United fans, are like, they were pretty chill on, for the most part, on Ten Hag until it started really going wrong at the start of the season. It's like, yeah, like time's up then. And I don't think anyone really wanted him to lose his job, because if you're actually a fan of a football club, you want them to do well. If you're dining out on being right because you don't like a manager, then you're just a drama merchant. You're not really actually looking there you're not wanting your team to succeed. Like,
yeah.
And I think the lot of the noise, as you say, around it is already starting up. You've got Gary Neville like on commentary at the weekend acting like he's watching the worst team. He actively sounds like he hates Man United now. It's gone from being critical of like where United are and what they are, what they're doing, to actually sounding like he's worse than Jamie Carragher for like just needlessly sticking the boot in. I saw someone say like, it's funny, like the difference between when Chelsea does something wrong and Man United do something wrong. When Chelsea do something wrong, oh, something's gone wrong. There's been a bit of a miscommunication. To when United does something wrong, it's like, well, they're obviously all poorly coached. They're terrible. All these players are awful. None of them care, and the coached by an idiot. Like there's just a complete dichotomy from it, and I think Roy Keane doesn't really get sucked into it as much, but it's another kind of negative voice of an ex-Man United player who achieved a load and like just sounds bitter that they're not where they were when they were there. It's like 30 years ago, man. Like you got to get over it. And I saw a really interesting point that someone brought. It was like, I think a lot of these ex-United pundits are worried that United are going to be successful again because then that's their meal ticket gone. Because no one's going to care about them being on TV if United are successful again.
Yeah, that's very good.
Because they've got nothing to whinge about anymore. They've got nothing, like if United are winning titles and winning stuff, like, well, they're doing it again now. Like what you did wasn't that special. And I wonder whether there is a bit of that, or whether it is a case of they are actually just legitimately not bitter, but like upset at the state of the club, and they're like just kind of like lashing out. But like I say, United fans aren't being as, I don't want to say controversial, but like being as miserable about the whole situation as these guys who were supposedly Man United, what's the word? Kind of ambassadors of the club.
Yeah. Supporters in the case of Neville, right? Like,
well, allegedly. I'm starting to actually doubt it. The amount that the amount he bigs up Liverpool and slams on United, like it's getting a bit cringe.
I understand if you're I say I understand. Obviously, it's come as no shock to anyone. I've never been part of a treble winning side in the Premier League, but like, it's like
really,
I can imagine. Yeah, I know. It's the dodgy knees. It stops me. But no, I feel I imagine if you were part of the club for so long, like from whenever Neville went through the youth academy. So let's say from like the age of 10 up until the day he retired, and then like, you know, he's been covering them as part of punditry and stuff. But in the time that he was within the club in terms of being a player, he was there for like one of the most, probably if not their most successful period ever. And to look at it now, I can understand the fact that you're always going to compare it to when you were there, and say like, well, we didn't do things like this, and like but at the same time, it's like as a fan, you should be, and especially if you're a pundit and you're in the media as well, you should be able to detach yourself from, okay, this isn't when I was here. I'm now as a pundit or a commentator or whatever. I need to separate. I can't be Gary Neville, the former player. I need to be Gary Neville, the commentator or the pundit, and actually analyze what is going wrong within the team. Because if you're just criticizing how open they are in midfield, then fair enough. But like you say, when it feels like it's just sort of beating the drum of just like, he's crap, this is awful, this is terrible, blah 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 blah. It's like, it just, like you say, it just comes across as bitter and just like it sounds like AFTV. It sounds like you might as well have someone, Robbie from AFTV, commentating Arsenal games during the Wenger period.
The stuff that he's coming out with is the exact stuff that Cristiano Ronaldo was getting criticised for saying. It's like, oh, the culture's not the same, the training ground's not as good. It's all this, and like he was like shunned by everyone for it, and so like this wrong, you should be going and do. I mean, he shouldn't have been going doing Piers Morgan interviews because he's a bell end. But like, Gary Neville doing it on commentary every time he watches a Man United game. He spends half the game sounding as miserable as Lee Dixon, just about slagging United off. It's just getting old, man. It's just getting really, really boring. And it definitely feeds back into that, like, it goes into that feedback loop of everybody in the media being miserable about United and making it about United because it's an easy sell for headlines, right? And it's just, and it's the same thing. It's like, okay, maybe he's getting dragged into just the clickbaitiness of what is modern football and modern media, and modern everything, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
but he does my absolute nutting. So,
well, it's like with the, just sort of circle it back to West Ham for a second. It's like it's like the Lopetegui conversation. It goes, I imagine is going on in the media. I don't really pay attention to TalkSport and stuff anymore. But like, but you hear it in commentary all the time, where it's like, oh, they've got Lopetegui's not working. Like, I bet they wish they kept David Moyes. It's like, no, it's like getting rid of Moyes was still the correct decision.
Yeah,
but like, just whether or not Lopetegui is the right guy or not is kind of irrelevant to David Moyes' job.
It's also like completely ignoring what. Yeah, he won a trophy. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Around that, like, it was like a lot of it was really miserable football and underperforming in the league. Exactly the thing that everyone had just been like slagging Ten Hag off for. He's like, well, he's won a trophy, but in the league they've been shit. Oh,
Yeah.
what about
So
David
when
Moyes? Oh, well, he's great though, isn't he? Because he's everyone's mate.
Yeah.
Everyone knows him, right? And I get sticking up.
Exactly.
I get sticking up for your mate, but at the same time, you still got to admit when, or at least pretend like you're an unbiased form of media, and
Well,
you know,
Neville had this. So Neville had that with Solskjaer, right? Like refused to criticize anything Ollie did. Like obviously I know you're like you thought Ollie was harshly done by in sort of hindsight and stuff. But like at the time when United were at their worst under Solskjaer, like Neville was awful on Sky because he just refused to say anything negative about about him as manager. And it's like you're not. I get you've got this close relationship with him, but again, that's not your job. Like to quote Roy Keane, like or to paraphrase Roy Keane.
yeah.
Like
If you want to do this
is
job, then you need to figure out how to not defend just your mates because they're your mates.
Yeah, exactly.
Or not be worried of saying it because you think they're going to fall out with you. It's like, well,
yeah.
Sometimes it's gonna be the case, isn't it? Like sometimes it's just not working out. But yeah, it's like I say, the pile-on of Amorim is already kind of building up speed, and it's just depressing to watch. Like I'm the same. Like I don't really watch or listen to TalkSport and stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Just because the same thing with Neville. Like I'm just getting bored of it, man. It's just the constant. What negative story can we spin about Man United now? And it's genuinely like I've noticed it in myself. Like I always like to think I was like quite a balanced football fan. I'll just watch United games and not really get drawn up in the in like the drama of it all. But the amount of times now it's like, no, I'm gonna bite before I get bit first.
Yeah,
I definitely go for the bait more these days.
Yeah.
And I'm always right, obviously, but like,
yeah, of course. But, did you see it in Talks actually? I didn't watch it, but it always appears in my recommended. It was a clip of Gabio Bondahor being like, "No, I think Amarim's gonna be great. I did my coaching badges with him." It's like,
Oh,
fuck,
yeah.
you did coaching badges. Fucking God help us all.
He thinks that's
No wonder England's got a coaching problem.
Yeah.
Gabio Bondahor was getting fast tracked.
Jesus Christ. Well, yeah, and it doesn't really. If Gabby Bonnell managed to do his coaching badges with him and he passed, it doesn't really say much about the coaching badges, does it?
Yeah,
so there's more of a detriment to the argument than it is a positive. I think. It's like, oh yeah, I'll be going in as a strikers coach. You know. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, it's not been the most fun weekend of football for the pair of us, but at least we did get to see Ruud van Nistelrooy in a milk trade man's roll neck on the sidelines at Old Trafford.
Oh yeah,
so that was obviously full half mast for the entire game.
I like. Do you know? Apart from the obvious haircut, the bloke hasn't really aged at all. He's just cut his hair and grown a beard, but he looks like. I feel like if you just shaved him and put his old wig on him, he'd still look like Ruud van Nistelrooy from the 2000s. Like
ludicrously handsome bastard.
Very handsome.
There was some other football that happened at the weekend, and I feel like we've not really we've pushed it to the end, but it is big talking points, right? The two teams that were the favourites for the title last year both lost. Newcastle at home finally putting in a decent performance and beating Arsenal 1-0. Who, I'll say it again, I think they've regressed from last year, and they're struggling a little bit. This Arsenal side, they don't look dangerous, or they don't look as dangerous as they have. Obviously, they're missing their captain, they're missing their key playmaker, but. Like I think they've already lost half as many games as they had last season. I don't see them really challenging for a title, and there's going to be big questions asked about Arteta at the end of the season should things continue the way that they are. But almost the biggest shock, I think, is Bournemouth against City, and it wasn't really a smash and grab. I know City had a lot of the ball, but Bournemouth were good value for that win. Again, City missing Rodri, but with the squad that they've got available, they should still be able to. As good, like I say, as good as Bournemouth were, City should be winning that game if they have sights on winning another Premier League. And I wonder whether a lot of the noise around everything that's going on at Man City, on top of the injury, is kind of weighing a bit heavy on everyone there. Because they're a team that just haven't looked anywhere near what they have been in the past. I know there's been a few new players come in and a few players leaving and all that kind of stuff, but they don't look as controlled as they have done in the past. They don't look as lethal. And they were just flubbing chance after chance after chance against Bournemouth. I don't know how much of those games that you caught, but like, do you have a similar feeling where it feels like those two, when they it feels like they're dropping the ball a little bit this year.
Yeah, I'll start with. I think they've got similar issues, and I think there's a similar problem with both of them actually. But I'll start with Arsenal because I think theirs is actually a little bit more egregious, to be honest. I think it's I th- and I think said I didn't think they had a brilliant transfer window in the summer. Obviously it was Calafiori, Mikel Moreno, and Sterling was like the main three players they brought in. There's no point talking about Neto coming in on loan because it doesn't matter. But like I think it's insane to let Emil Smith Rowe and Fabio Vieira leave and not bring in another creative type midfielder to replace them because they now find themselves in the situation they find themselves in where Odegaard gets injured on international duty. He's been out. Well, it's been like what 2 months, like, and I think whilst Odegaard is, I've seen Odegaard have games in the past where he doesn't really come off for him. But usually in these types of games, you need a player like that on the pitch to just unlock a good defense. And I thought Newcastle like for as well as Newcastle defended, I thought Arsenal were really really blunt going forward and have been for pretty much since Odegaard's been out. Really, like I said, I think letting Vieira. I'm not saying Vieira was a good player, but like the games I saw him in, I was never really convinced. But like again, letting Smith Rowe leave, who was desperate to get in the team. I think he's more than talented enough to play that role in the middle, and is someone who can like not to the same standard as Odegaard, obviously, but you want someone who can at least do a similar job. Like whilst Odegaard is great at what he does, I think if you at least have someone who's good at that role, then it just makes life a little bit easier for you. And like the fact that I know that Arsenal fans will say, well, we've got Nwari, is that the young kids
Yeah,
they've
yeah,
got on the bench, who's like really well thought of, looks really promising. He's 17,
yeah.
like and. I know there's an argument to say we can't chuck him in like these types of games and that sort of thing. Well, then you should have gone and got someone. Then, like
Yeah.
you either make him the backup to Odegaard and give him his chance when Odegaard isn't available, or you go and get someone. Like I know the injury happened, I think after the international break, but like I say, it seems criminal to me that if your most influential player, you've got zero cover. And I know it's difficult. Like City haven't really got cover for Rodri either, which even then I think is kind of insane, really, that you can't go and find a sitting midfielder who, again, won't be of the same quality as Rodri, but can at least fill that void and do a decent job against teams, no disrespect, like Bournemouth, who, when you compare to City, are just not on the same level. And it's the same with Newcastle and Arsenal. Like Newcastle aren't having a great season by their usual standards under Eddie Howe, and Arsenal, that's a game that Arsenal really should be looking at to get 3 points if you want to challenge for the title. I think with Arsenal more, I'll go on to see in a second, but I think with Arsenal more, I wonder if last season, especially, I was going to say the last couple of seasons, but last season especially, going so close and still missing out, I wonder how they did. And I think that combined with being like seconds away from beating City at the Etihad has just done them in a little bit mentally because they haven't really looked the same, I don't think, since that City game. And they haven't really looked that great since the start of the season anyway. So I wonder if that sort of like trying to pick themselves up to go again has just sort of caught up with them. Like, I mean, it makes Liverpool being able to keep the pace up with City for 3 years on the spin look even more impressive because yeah, it can be relentless.
I think that with the Arsenal thing as well, I wonder how much them missing out on points at the death of games last year.
Yeah.
Instead of Arteta going, okay, well, we need to kill a game off sooner. We need to finish games off. He's gone, we need to figure out how to protect a close victory. And I think you can go one or two ways. And I think his transfers over the last couple of transfer windows have really shown the way that he wants to do it. He's signing loads of big defenders, loads of big midfielders. We're going to try and win games in the, get the advantage through set pieces. Like we're going to be strong and hard to break down, and we're going to rely on Saka and Odegaard to make the difference. Well, you're missing half of it now. Martinelli's not the same player that he did a couple of years ago. I think Havertz gets a really rough rap. I like Havertz. I think he's a good player, but he's not. I think he's a fine utility forward player. He's good at kind of like dropping off and making space and opening things up for these other players around him. But he's not Henry. Like he's not gonna single handedly win games for you.
He's Bobby Firmino.
Yeah.
Like if you're sort of comparing to like squads who have challenged it in the past, but Firmino was most effective when, or you saw the best out of Firmino when Mane and Salah were firing, and the difference is Mane and Salah fired all the time pretty much, whereas you've got only half of that with Saka. Like Saka's out of the front three. He's the only one who's really been that consistent. Like he's been pretty consistent. Like hasn't really dropped a level. I don't think. Whereas like say Martinelli, not being great in the last couple of years. Trossard blows hot and cold. Sterling hasn't really had any impact since he's gone there. Yeah, I do wonder how much it's taken a toll on them mentally. Like say, losing the City last year and then like nearly beating them. Because you think if they had beaten City at the Etihad, what a boost that would have given them, and they probably would have gone on a bit of run. I think, but to lose it in the Man League, or not lose it, but to drop 2 points after being that close to doing it, I
think
wonder.
It feels like it'll have felt like a loss.
Yeah,
if I can actually say the words properly, like it'll have felt like a loss to get that equaliser, like literal last kick of the game. Yeah, it'll have felt like a loss to them there.
Yeah, and with City, like I just think they haven't been as good this year. Don't think they've replaced players adequately. Don't think they've actually strengthened the squad all that much. Like I know they've got injuries, and I know Pep was going like, "Oh, we've only got 13 fit senior players." You're Man City, like that shit doesn't fly. Yeah. Unfortunately,
yeah. Like, well, the difference is that all your 13 fit senior players are internationals who you paid 60 million quid for. So, exactly. Like, so maybe put those 13 players on the pitch and then go and win.
Yeah. And this wasn't like Bournemouth sort of smashed and grabbed it. They should have been about 3-0 up before City got their first goal of the game. Like I thought Bournemouth were excellent. I didn't see the full game. I saw like the highlights on Match of the Day and stuff. But like, and even when the chances did come to City, like Haaland sort of dipped off again after a really good start to the season, and some weird shit going on with Phil Foden where he's only just got back into the team. I don't know whether that's like giving him like easing him back in after a busy summer. But like I say, from Player of the Year last year to I think he's only just played 2 back-to-back 90-minute games.
Yeah,
it's, and I do think the Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne miss. Like again, I get it; they're exceptional, world-class players. You take them out of any team, they'll be brilliant. I just look at it's difficult enough to look at title-winning sides in the past and think would they have coped better if those like important players had left or been injured or whatever. I don't think City have really. Like again, the fact they brought Calvin Phillips to be the backup to Rodri, that didn't work, and then they just went, "Oh, we won't bother then. We'll just stick Kovacic in there." He's a good player. It's not the same role though. And you look at like this player, and you look at like I'm sure like people listening could name like 3 or 4 really good City midfielders who can pass the ball effectively, that could get into City's team as a squad player, or even from around like Spain or Italy or whatever. Like there are players out there. It felt like City just didn't really. Like not replacing Alvarez. Like Haaland goes on a bit of a dip in form. What do you do? And now you're going to play him in every single game this season because you haven't got anyone else, and he's going to be burnt out by the sort of time we hit March, April. Like, it's really bad squad building this year.
I said this at the start of the season, and I was like slammed. Like, I think I tweeted it out, and I had people saying I'm an idiot. But like I said, Man City have made over £100 million profit in the transfer window this summer. Sold Julian Alvarez, who's a good, like, really good player, hard-working forward, gets you 20 goals a year. João Cancelo, I know he fell out with Pep, but a really high-quality fullback. Like, then he had like players who were getting minutes, so like players like Sergio Gomez. You had Jan Couto, who was out on loan at Girona last year, really good right back. They decided to sell him. They've brought in Savinho in obvious money laundering scheme. Re-signed a 33-year-old Ilkay Gundogan. Yeah. And that's it. Like that's what they did this summer. And like I said, is this the sign the actions of a team who believe they aren't going to get absolutely slapped financially when this judgment finally goes out, or is this the actions of a club that feel like they have to tighten their belts and be like proper cross the T's and dot the I's now, and they can't just like let a few million slip here and there because they'll make it up from a gambling sponsorship that doesn't exist. Like, I wonder how much of that, and that kind of rolls into what I was saying before of like how much of the outside noise and the outside pressure and everything that's going on around the club is affecting the club there, because they just haven't looked anywhere near the same, really. There's been a couple of impressive performances, but I'd say there's been a lot more very average performances from a lot of very good players. That being said, they're inevitably going to go on a 2-month unbeaten run at the end of the season and win the title, like, because that's what they'll do. But no, it's been an interesting start to the season for the two teams who were the favourites for the title. I thought City were going to win it, but I thought Arsenal might push them close. A lot of people thought that this was Arsenal's time. It's actually turning out like Liverpool might actually be up there and winning a title, which I think would be hilarious after all the argument of, oh well, of course Klopp didn't win anything because Man City were there. We get the other bald Dutch manager in. Don't give him any players other than an absolutely cropped Italian winger, and he goes and walks the league first season. It'd be hilarious.
Yeah. I've been really impressed with Liverpool. I think actually before I get on to Liverpool, I just want to give a quick mention of Bournemouth. I thought they were, from what I saw, I thought they were outstanding.
We've kind of skirted over it. Bournemouth were and have been fantastic under Iraola. Were criticised with the appointment of him last year. I thought they were really good after he came in. Made some decent signings, got some good transfers, and they're playing really good football. Like really good, like you were saying before, really effective counter-attacking, high-intensity football. And it's just really fun to watch. I thought they were going to struggle after selling Dom Solanke, but they don't seem to have missed the beat. Evan Nilsson seems like a good pickup. But all of their options in the final third, all their wingers are just terrifying because they are fast. They just run at you.
As I say, Semenyo's a lump as well. Like he absolutely manhandled. I think it's for the first goal. He just absolutely manhandles Kyle Walker, who has been shockingly shite for ages now. Like definitely on his way out. But like, I think they're onto something really, really good with Iraola. Currently sit 10th. They're 3 points off 5th, where Arsenal sit. Definitely a contender for the European place this year. I think Bournemouth, like, they can put a good run of results together, and I think that's always been the thing with them. Like they start. It feels like to me from the outside looking in, it feels like they're starting to put a good run together, and they go inexplicably lose to like a Leicester or a team that they shouldn't really. You do think on current form they shouldn't be losing to. So if they can sort of maintain some good form, there's no reason why they won't be pushing those European spots this year. I don't think. Like where they'll get it on obviously remains to be seen, but. Yeah, really, really impressed, and it made me a bit sad actually watching it because I was like, "Oh man, like, see, it is possible to get a Spanish manager and it work." For fuck's sake! But yeah, no, I thought they were. I think they've been excellent this year. But yeah, and so have Liverpool. I think, obviously, I do think there is a little bit to be said for riding the coattails of Klopp's work a little bit, and like we've said before, like refining it and making it a little bit less chaotic. But I definitely still think there's a little bit of Klopp DNA within that.
Yeah. Like don't get me wrong, like they have been fantastic. I think that they have seem to have a little bit more control over games because they don't want to make games as much of a basketball match. They're happy to kind of sit back and take the sting out of a game and just kind of systematically pull a team apart a little bit, which is everything that Liverpool under Klopp were criticised for not being able to do. Right, is actually kind of control the game and win the games where the other team will try and make it difficult. And I think he's just done a really good job. You know, but we have to bear in mind that I think a lot of the transfers last year were really good, and they have got a fantastic core of players. I think that like their midfield and forward options are really, really good. Not got the most options there, but I think if you're looking at depth in terms of a front line, you're going to struggle to find a much deeper midfield and front line in the Premier League. Defensively, thin on the ground, and that's going to need some work. But I think when you factor in that, I mean, obviously, and all these guys have played together for at least a year, so there's been no new players coming in to try and adapt to it or get used to each other. They've all known each other for at least a year. A lot of these players, a lot more. So like they've just kind of like managed to pick up where they left off and are looking consistent in doing it. But I do think like the job that he's doing under the situation of Van Dijk and Salah and Trent and Alisson, their four best players, like it could be argued, all of them, are all likely, or at least most of them are likely to leave in the summer. Doesn't look like there's no reports anyway that there's new contracts on the horizon for. I mean, Trent seems nailed on to leave.
I think Van Dijk seems to be the only one that there's been any real talk of movement. And
even then, like when you see interviews with him, he's like kind of pouring cold water on it a little bit, and like so we'll see what happens with that. And you know, obviously they've basically signed Alisson's replacement already. Like you're not going to be signing Mamadashvili to come in and be a backup when you've already got one of the best backups in the league at the club already. And there's talks that he wants to leave now because it's been shown that he's not going to be the next in line to be a starting Liverpool goalie. So like you've got all that over the top of it, and he's still just getting performances out of people. And I think like Salah at the weekend showed why if they're going to be throwing any money at anyone to stick around, it's got to be him. if
Yeah.
purely, and I think purely because you just can't replace him. I think if
No.
it was if they'd have sold, I was all up for like the last couple of years, like yeah, you should sell and cash in on him, get the money for him, get that 150 million that was being touted around last year from Saudi to rebuild and reinvest. But if you're keeping him, give him another contract because he's so good. Like he's still a ridiculously good player, really effective. I said it numerous times. The closest thing to I've in the Premier League that I've seen to Messi at Barcelona, in that he can coast for 85 minutes, but he'll make a goal and get a goal. Like he will do the unbelievable thing and make things happen and get a result, get a ball, get it over the line. So yeah, like if they're keeping any of them around, it's got to be him. And yeah, he's going to be on ridiculous money until he's 35, 36. But you know, yeah, like sometimes you've got to bite that bullet. Just and as well because they've mismanaged it so far. So you've either got to kind of you just kind of got to own it and go, okay, well we've made a rod for our own back here because you're already going to have to get a new right back and probably a new centre back, and that's going to cost a load of money, and you just ain't going to be able to replace Salah. And without Salah, yeah, this Liverpool team's really solid and really good, but I think you kind of roll back to the Klopp Liverpool that didn't have those final pieces, that didn't have Alisson, that didn't have Salah, and didn't have Fabinho in the middle of the park, and you know those final pieces that brought it all together. You roll back to a team that is a solid 11, but probably unremarkable.
I think if Salah was to go, the only player I can sadly think of that I think could come in and replace him, but even still won't be as good as him, is probably like Mo Kudus. I think he's like the natural. I don't really see him anywhere else. But yeah, I think on Salah, I definitely think there is a real argument to say he's like one of the most underrated players that's ever played in the Premier League, because it just feels like he never really, like, everyone talks about obviously how important he is and how good he is, but it still feels like it's understated how good of a footballer he actually is. Like it's where it annoys when I hear people say like, oh, there's like comparisons used between him and like Eden Hazard, and to me it's not even close. Like
No.
you know, yeah, Hazard was technically a very good footballer, but Mo Salah's never taken a year off and got like one assist and one goal, right? Like Hazard was a good player, but like doesn't even lace the boots of someone like Mo Salah for me. Like I think he's one of the best. Not only one of the best right wingers in the Premier League. He's one of the best players in the world for me. Like by some distance.
He's an all time. Like if you're going all time Premier League 11, like as a right forward, like you know if you know the different eras and all that kind of stuff. If you go in right midfielder, it's Beckham, I think. Like, but you know if you're going that right forward position, then I don't think anyone comes close to him in terms of not even just output, but just actual quality and kind of effect on games. Like he's just so effective. He's right up there in modern Premier League players. He's right up there with like Kevin De Bruyne, like those kind of players who are like streets ahead of everyone else. He's as important to them as Rodri and De Bruyne have been to Man City the past 3 or 4 years. And maybe it's just because he's only got the one Premier League title and he's never really going to massively achieve something internationally. Maybe that's what it is. But he deserves to be talked in the same breath as, you know, like Henry and Shearer and Beckham and all these kind of guys who are like the best of the best in their position who's ever been in the Premier League, been at a club in the Premier League. He's phenomenal. And like maybe he's earned an extra 2 or 3 years at Liverpool, like just through the performances he's put in. And they're gonna have to pay him an absolute wedge, but you know they've kind of made a rod for their own back, really.
Yeah, and if he does end up leaving, I just hope he doesn't go to Saudi, because I just feel like he still can do. He can still do it at the top level. He can go to Madrid. He can go. You know, Madrid can play a 3-4 winger system.
We've already got 2 left wingers on the pitch, so
yeah, exactly.
But
like, I mean, he could go to any club in the world and absolutely tear up any league, I think. So I just hope he goes somewhere that's either a sideways step from like where Liverpool are currently, or like, you know, a slight upgrade with like being like a Real Madrid or a Bayern Munich or something like that. Like
I could see
another chance to win a Champions League.
Yeah, I could actually see if he went to Italy, he could get another 2 or 3 years of him out of his at his peak, just because of the slower pace of the game there. Like, I know it's kind of like a cliche to say it's not as fast, but if you ever actually watch Serie A football, it is basically walking football.
Yes. Yeah, pretty much.
And finally, we'll touch on one other result. Your favourite team, Spurs, beat Villa 4-1. A Villa side that have been mega again this year, but couldn't really take the advantage in the first half. And Spurs, you were saying earlier, like you're doing it half to half at West Ham. Spurs are the exact same. They'll have every game I've watched of Spurs, they're shite one half and amazing the other, and it's just a roll of the dice on whether they're going to come out on top.
Yeah.
Because are we going to concede 4 goals in the first half, and if not, we might score 4 in the second half. Like they are bonkers, but it was a great turnaround. I think like they created enough chances to win that game, and like after a really disappointing result last weekend in the league, they come out and they knock Man City out the cup and they beat a really, really good Villa convincingly at home. So it's another week in Spurs, being Spurs, #Spursy. But yeah, good performance from them, and at least Andrew wasn't quite as miserable as he was last week.
I was going to say they're one of the most flip-floppy sides in the league this year. I think like you just don't know what you're going to get from them, which must be like pull your hair out sort of stuff if you're a Spurs fan and to watch it week in week out. But like, I think I didn't watch the full game. I caught the highlights. It seemed like Villa second half especially just made a lot of really bad mistakes that just led to Spurs. Like I think the second or third goal, there's like a couple of mistakes in there. Like obviously great for Slanky that he seems to be finding the back of it on a slightly more regular basis now. But yeah, like Spurs, I do wonder with Spurs. Like I spoke about it last week in terms of where they want to be and stuff, and if they want to get back to being in the top 4 regularly and eventually like challenging for trophies and stuff. And like again, it pains me to say because I really like Ange. I shouldn't because he's a Spurs manager, but like I do find him quite personable. And like I would have loved if West Ham had tried to get him a few years back when the chance was probably there. But I look at Ange as kind of like the guy before. Do you know what I mean? So you know how like the example I always use is like Rodgers at Liverpool.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, the football's great. And like, it's fun to watch them. And like, on the right season, they might like challenge for something. But defensively, they're a fucking mess. And like, it could go like, it's almost like a ticking time bomb. It's like, well, if the goals dry up, we are in trouble. And it kind of feels like that a little bit with Spurs, where it's like, I think Andrews has been the perfect tonic post Mourinho and Conte to sort of like get the feel good factor back at Tottenham. And they may well challenge for the Europa League this year. They may well like make a push for the top 4. And look, they're in the quarterfinals now of the League Cup, and City are out of it. So there's definitely an opportunity for them to do something in the League Cup. But I just wonder the way he sets them up and the way he's so stubborn in the way he wants to set them up, whether it's ever going to actually be enough to get them over the line in those sort of big moments. But if he keeps Spurs on this sort of trajectory of just sort of maintaining them where they are in the sort of like top 6, top 7 of the league, and can maybe get them in the top 4 in a couple of years in a row, then maybe that's a good platform for someone else to come in and get Spurs to the level they obviously the fan base and the club clearly want to get to. But yeah, it's been a good week for Tottenham, annoyingly. So right.
Well, hopefully they don't do too well in the League Cup because we've got them.
It's you guys are playing. Okay, that'd be an interesting game.
Yeah. It's at Spurs as well. Middle of December, I think it is. For
God, the way Amram supposedly plays for Sporting, the way that could be like a 6-6.
Yeah.
that could be an actual cricket score.
Yeah.
Who's someone to watch?
Who's leaving the most defenders back?
Yeah, exactly.
We've got 2, like, so we'll be all right.
Yeah, it'll be like watching 11v11, but on Rush. On FCT. No defenders, just everyone trying to get on the score sheet.
No tactics, just vibes, mate. It works for us.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun game at least, right? Well, yeah. Overall, not the best weekend of football, but positive news for United fans with the new manager coming in. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how long it takes the general media to absolutely bury him and burn what was once a beautiful budding flower into absolute ashes, and hopefully things turn around for you guys as well. It's like I say, it's easy to dwell on the negative side of a bad result like that, but bearing in mind like I say, first half of that game I thought was pretty even, and you turn it around and beat us at home. So you cost Eric Ten Hag his job at least. So you've done something positive.
Yeah, at least there's that.
Yeah,
at least there's that. And look, like I say, just to be clear, I'm not calling for his head just yet. But
no.
You know, definitely, I'm starting to. The scales are starting to tip in that direction. But I'm still willing.
It's
to
just
give him
frustration
time.
of wanting. And I get it. I've been in the exact same thing with Ten Hag, and I was for ages. Like, I don't want to see a manager at my club lose his job, because obviously I want the manager at my club to be doing well, and I hope they can turn it around and get us playing well. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just the wrong fit. Sometimes it doesn't work, and it's just a frustration and a hope that things will improve sooner rather than later, right?
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Right, guys. I'm going to the Everton game next week, so you'll get a full rundown of how it goes. No matter which way it finishes.
I'll keep an eye on TV, see if you're swinging for Sean Dyche. Guys, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Wherever you're watching or listening to this, please do leave a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family. I don't know, make 10 fake accounts and subscribe, whatever. I don't care. Got to pump up those numbers. We will be back again next time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Sarah.